All right, folks, looks like it's time for us to begin. If I could have all of your attention. My name is James Tapp. I was tapped to moderate this afternoon, and I will talk to you in a few moments about some of the basic parameters and give out a few thank yous here. But first, I'm going to hand the microphone off to Brian Fraser.
Hello, Brian Fraser, President, Salina NAACP. I'm glad to see you all here. I'm glad that we were given the opportunity to collaborate with the Salvation Army, North Salina, and a lot of the things that they're doing to get this forum off the ground. It's really nice to see our candidates here that show they have an interest in what is affecting us as citizens here in Salina. And so thank you for showing up, candidates. Thank you, citizens, for coming, and let's have a great discussion on what we can do to improve our community.
I think Brian said it really well. Only thing I'll add is welcome to our neck of the woods.
All right.
All right, some basic rules and procedures for today. I do want to thank all of you for coming today. I know the word got out a little bit recently, but that makes it feel like a flash mob, doesn't it? All right. I do want to point out today that this is not necessarily a debate amongst candidates. We have no problem with conflicting positions, but we're not here to scream and holler and argue at each other. That raises the next point, and that is that we do expect all participants in this room, be they candidates, constituents, visitors, folks wandering through to find a restroom, to conduct themselves in a respectful and civil manner. You just think about who may be watching and who you may be representing and the impression that you give. I do want to give some thanks not only to all of you for coming, but also to Salina Unit 4041, the Salina branch of the NAACP. President Brian Fraser. I want to thank also North Salina Community Development and Salvation Army and Captain Lynn Lopez for hosting and housing us. We really kind of piggybacked on their existing event, and if you do not know, this evening is going to be quite an event. There's posters for the concert and that sort of thing out on the front door. Please spread the word and please attend if that's your thing. Today's format, let me get to that in a second. Before we do, I want to let you all know that the League of Women Voters has a representative here. Raise your hand, please. And if you are not registered, or if you know someone who is not registered to vote, you can pick up one of these spiffy little cards and ask some voter registration questions in the back. Also, I believe we have representatives from the local Democratic Party. Yes, wait a minute. And from the local Libertarian Party, is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Do we have a GOP Republican representative here? I do not see one. That's fine. So, as to the format today, we are going to have the school board members come up first in alphabetical order. That's my first test of the day. Did I get them all right? Each candidate will have 3 minutes to make their statement, introduce themselves, talk about the issues they care about, whatever. You can talk about your favorite pasta for all I care. It's your 3 minutes. We have a tremendously skilled timekeeper in Brian Fraser over here, so keep out of the corner of your eye, keep watching him. He will give you 3 minutes on the clock. At 1 minute, he'll hold up a one finger. At 30 seconds, he will hold up this, and then when you run out of time, either it's going to beep or he's going to do something like this, and I will tackle you from stage right. After the school board candidates are finished, y'all can return to your seats, but we will have a certain amount of time, depending on how the overall budget works out, to field questions. If you do have a question, there are these cards on your seats. Please grab a pen, write something down. Feel free to do so while the candidates are speaking. If an idea pops into your head, pass them to me somehow. Paper airplanes are flying. And I will try to get through as many of the questions that I've already received and any more that I take in today. Everybody clear on all that? After the Q&A with the school board, watching the clock, we'll try to budget enough time. And then we'll have 3-minute statements by the city commission candidates. I do want to just say I'm pleased to see our 2 front rows pretty much filled with people running for office.
Yes.
It is dispiriting, to say the least, when we do not have a competitive race in local politics and at any level, really. But it's good to see people willing to step forward, throw their name in the hat, say, I'm willing to serve, I'm willing to give it a shot, I'm willing to bring my experience, I'm willing to bring my perspective. So it kind of warms my heart. And with that, we will get to, start clock right now. We'll get to our first candidate for USD 305, our local school board, and that would be Mark Bandry.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming out. I think I'll take this out here and do it this way. So again, as everybody said, I really appreciate you all coming out and having interest. Not only is it great so many folks are running, and thanks for all you guys for doing that, it's wonderful when people take interest and time to come out and listen. So again, I appreciate that very much. A quick bit about my background, and then I want to go into just a little bit about why I'm running for school board. My wife and I have lived in Salina for just over 6 years. Earlier in our marriage, we lived in Lindsborg for 4 years as well. That was in the early 90s, and my wife taught in Salina schools then. My wife currently works for USD 305. She's the district reading instructional specialist. Education is something that's very important to both of us. That's part of my reason for school board. I hold a doctorate in educational leadership, a master's in management, and a bachelor's in business and psychology. My wife has a doctorate in children's literacy, reading and language arts. Hers is from Ohio State. Mine is from George Fox University. We spent a lot of time in our marriage pursuing education. I think it's tremendously important. Obviously, we've chosen the higher education route. For myself, my professional career is I've spent 31 years working for private colleges, 4 in Kansas, 1 in Arkansas, and 1 in Ohio. So I've got a background in private education from a lot of different places. Currently, I serve Bethany College as registrar and director of financial aid. I worked at Kansas Wesleyan for 4 years as vice president for enrollment management. I've been in financial aid for 18 of those 31 years. I've done some things in admissions. Bottom line of all of that is I know a lot about the educational process, both from my background and my wife's as a teacher. What we try to do is we want to help students, no matter who they are, no matter what they want to do, whether it's pursuing military, whether it's pursuing a vocational technical career, whatever one's wanting to do, we need education. We need to be prepared for that without a doubt. That's the reason I'm running for school board, is I think my background as an educational leader, again, having worked in higher education all these years, I think it brings a lot of skills that are correlative to working for the school board. I'm very, very pleased with the current school board. Thank you, Ann, for all your leadership and work with that. The school board these last 2 years has done a great job providing leadership for the community. I want to sustain that momentum. I think Ms. Exline, as the superintendent of schools, it already is, but is going to do a tremendous job. She's got a great leadership team with her. The job of the school board is to keep supporting those folks and help make sure things are moving in the right direction, no matter, again, what educational mission our young folks want to use out there. So I want to keep that momentum going. I hope the electorate will, 30 seconds? Okay. Well, the electorate will give us the opportunity, and it sounds like I'm out of time.
No.
Okay.
What? Couple more seconds.
Little miscommunication between the timekeeper and me. But anyhow, I hope that you'll give me the opportunity to serve the community in this way. This is the second time I've run for school board, but in terms of leadership things within the community, there it is, there's the buzzer. I will stop there. Thank you. Whoever's next, James will be Houston, off we go.
Okay, I'll keep my hand in the air now.
It's always right.
Keep it up there. Yeah.
Because if he doesn't,
Yeah.
What does that mean, halfway?
half,
30 seconds left.
1 minute.
Half a minute, not half the time.
No, half a minute, 30 seconds to go, if my math is right. Our next candidate for Salina School Board in alphabetical order, I believe, is Scott Gardner. No, he isn't. Dana Casso.
Casso's a K.
Well, okay, who's next? James?
Or not for school.
Right. Who did I leave out?
Do you have their names up there?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, which one's next?
I got Scott down.
What's your name?
Are you messing with me?
Come on, man.
James, what's your name?
Sorry, I should have told you.
How's everybody doing? I assure you, I won't use the full 3 minutes. I'm not a big talker. Scott Gardner, I'm actually born in Kansas City, Missouri. I grew up here in Salina, lived on the North End, grew up in the Salvation Army, through the YMCA sports, went off to college, got a number of degrees, a number of certificates, things of that nature. So I'm not going to go down and tell you how great these pieces of paper may say that somebody is or somebody isn't. That's just not me. My focus for the school board is simple. I've come up, I've climbed the corporate ladder in America, I've done well. But I also know that our children are the reason for us doing well going forward. And so in order to do that, we have to make sure that we equip them as best we can in order for them to do the best that they can. And in order to do that, we have to look at what's going on. And so one of the big things that I do is continuous improvement. So I'm big on numbers, big on statistics. And right now, we have to make sure that we're putting money where it needs to be. And one of the questions that I always ask is, what is the expectation of our customer? 9 times out of 10, we don't talk to our customer. We try to tell the customer what we believe they need to know, or what we think they should do, or what they think they want. But I've always said, if you go to a car lot and you're wanting to buy a truck and they try to get you to buy a car, how did that work out for you? The customer will tell you what they need. Our kids, our businesses are telling us what they need. So where Salina goes, where our children go, is dependent upon what the customer's expectations are. And we truly need to understand what those are, as opposed to trying to tell someone what we believe their expectations should be. So based upon that, I'm here because I want to try to do the best I can to give back to the community that's done so much for me and for my family. So, thank you.
I'm going to move out to the center.
Thank you, Scott Gardner. Our next candidate for school board is Dana Casso.
Hello, my name is Dana Casso. Just a little bit about myself. My husband and I have lived in Salina for 25 years. We have 3 children, ages 24, 22, and 18, who have all been through USD 305. I just finished my last one in May with her graduating and going to K-State. I'm very passionate about the school district. I've been involved in many levels as a parent, as a PTA president, as a mentor to children. Most importantly, you probably know me, if you know me, about the school marathon program. I started that when my kids were at Meadowlark, and it's still going 15 years later in every public and private school, so I'm very proud of that accomplishment. What I've done to get ready for this election is talk to people. That's kind of my gift. I've met with Superintendent Lennox Line. I've met with Lisa Peters, who's the Executive Director of Business, Finance, and I have met with past and present members of the school board, and I have also met with teachers. That was one of my biggest, my most important areas, was to speak to the people who are touching our kids every single day, meeting with them, learning from them, reaching out to them. I had a wonderful time hearing their stories and getting to know them better. I also have teachers here that are my friends, so I've been hearing this for quite some time. I also have been talking to parents. And I think through all of that, I have learned communication is the key. Every single person I talk to says we've all got to communicate better. And I think that's what we all need to do as a community, as a society. Some of the challenging issues I foresee happening: funding, obviously an issue. We just received money, but it's not enough. We've got to figure out this piece of the puzzle, and with Lisa Peters heading that up, I feel like we've got a good opportunity to move forward. We did just make a huge, significant change by getting, I think it was $5 million back after refinancing. So that tells me our school board people are doing their job. Emotional and social needs. That's a very, very big piece of the puzzle, and I happen to be educated as a rec therapist. I worked with kids at a psychiatric center. It's my passion. It's my job as a parent to social and emotionally care for my children, and I feel like I bring that piece of the puzzle to the school board if I'm elected. And lastly, we've got to work on teacher recruitment. That's a big issue, and we need lots of help reaching out to people and telling people what a wonderful school district we have. One of my favorite school teachers in the school district told me the school board of education has great educators who know what they're doing. They need great community people who will speak for the community. Thank you, NAACP, for hosting me.
Thank you, Dana. Our next candidate, also for Salina USD 305. Sorry, I'm out of time. This is over. Is Corey Sherman North. Corey?
Oh, thank you all for having us here today. As a mother of 6, and having navigated 4 different states' school systems, and all that means, as a parent, I do feel it's time for me to give back and help out and direct my efforts to assisting our wonderful teachers and Board of Education that have done so much here in Salina to reach their goal of high quality education for all. As I grew up in Ohio, I watched my single mom raise us 3 while working days and going to school nights and weekends to earn her college degree. It took her 10 years and some help from the social safety net, a few welfare checks, and a lot of free school lunches for us kids. Her patient path to an eventual law career really made me very aware of the power behind public education to change lives for the better. Raising 6 children, now 34, on down to Lakewood 13, while pursuing my own profession in art curating, has also been challenging and rewarding as well. As an art historian, I regularly research and compile information on historical events and economics, philosophies, and politics of past ages, while actively participating in our own here. For almost 4 years now, I've been serving on the board of directors of the state's nonprofit Kansas Museum Association, and have recently been appointed to the 10-state larger organization of the Mountain Plains Museum Association. And so I've really learned how boards function and how they best steward their policies, and they're advocating for more funds, as well as shepherding the annual budget. And as a Salina 305 school board member, I would bring these experiences to bear on upholding and furthering the district's mission and the vision for learning for all, whatever it takes.
All right. Alphabetically, she always draws the final speech. Our final school board candidate is Ann Zimmerman, and welcome to the mic.
Thank you. We Zimmermans always know our place in the line. Thank you to Northtown and to the NAACP and to the Salvation Army. I know most of you are here, and I'm really happy you're here. My name is Ann Zimmerman, and I'm running for re-election to the Salina USD 305 School Board where I now serve as president. So I'd really like to finish my year, which started in July. Since I got elected 4.5 years ago, they changed the elections, so those of us that have been serving got an extra 6 months on our term. And it doesn't really make sense to elect school board members in November to start in January, because that's right in the middle of the budget year, middle of the school year, but that's what we have now, so we'll make the best of it. I grew up in Salina in the public schools, starting with Huesner and through South High, and back when it had pods, and I got an excellent education. I graduated from K-State in elementary education and taught for a very short time in the schools of Kansas City, Kansas. And a few years later, I graduated from Harvard Law School, which is not like Kansas at all, but I did come back to Kansas, and I started working for Kansas Legal Services, first in Wichita and then in Manhattan with low-income people and elderly, providing civil and administrative legal services for them. I then moved back to Salina to do mediation. I've been doing mediation since I got out of law school, but not as a focus. And now that's my legal focus, is to get people together who don't agree with each other and to try and find a way for them to agree with each other, which has served me well as learning how to live with the school board. But I want to say that right now the school board is working together exceptionally well, and I'm really proud of that, and I want to have us keep going with that good functioning. And we have a great new superintendent with Lynn Exline, who's served just about every job in the district, as a teacher, as a principal of an elementary school, a high school principal, and in various parts of the leadership team at the district office. We're trying to raise salaries where they ought to be for the priceless work that the teachers do. And with the new money from the state, accounting for inflation, the budget is just about caught up to where it was in 2009. Kansas has to do better. So please vote for me, Ann Zimmerman, and for all the best candidates on or before November 5th. Thank you very much.
Use joke to segue to Q&A session. Yes, my wife and I thought about going to mediation, but we couldn't really agree on whether or not we should. I apologize. Thank you. Like I said, there are cards at each seat. If anyone has had a question pop into their head, please raise the card and I will collect. Anyone else? Cards, cards, cards.
Won't be a secret who wrote it.
Well, I'm going to mix it up with the other ones. If I can find it. All right, I don't know, does the microphone help with the recording? Yes. All right, so what we're going to do, I think, is if this court will reach all of our candidates, we'll go down questions for about 20 minutes, or we run out of questions. By all means, if these questions prompt a question in your mind, jot it down on a card, pass it up. If we don't have time for that, then maybe just raise your hand. But remember, keep it civil, keep it respectable. After this Q&A, we'll go to the city commission candidates, and we will hopefully get through an equal amount of time for Q&A with them. Yeah. Great.
I have a question for you.
You got it. Thank you so much. All right. What we'll do is, if you have a particular desire to answer the question, feel free to raise your hand. If not, we're just going to throw the mic at your head. The first question for school board candidates. This question comes from a citizen concerned that North Salina children may be underrepresented in the district's gifted programs. What should USD 305 do to improve those programs and ensure that inclusion is fair and equitable? Any takers? All right, we'll go with Ann first, then Corey.
Probably be helpful.
We have established the Equity Council in the USD 305 district, and it hasn't done a lot of activities yet, but one of the things it's dealing with is how to make things fair. Oh, and I think Brian wants to know how long I'm supposed to be talking.
Wing it.
So if there's a problem, you should bring it to the Equity Council, because I'm on it now, I haven't been on it now, James has been on it from the start, and they did quite a bit of work for the first year, just getting to where they could communicate with each other on difficult issues, and making bylaws and making sure they knew what they were supposed to be doing. But if you have issues of equity and fairness and discrimination or such things, that would go to the Equity Council would be a good place to talk about that. And I know that the school board would take it seriously. We try to be fair without the Equity Council, but obviously it doesn't always work, and there are many societal, cultural reasons that set some people behind others, and that's not good for anybody. That's enough. Thank you.
Corey, did you want to speak to this? And I'm hoping this reaches.
Now that Ann gave us some good information, I'm just going to give you a little bit of a parent point of view, because I've been in that situation, moving here about 7 years ago, mid-school year. Short answer is ask. Ask the school, ask to meet with the principal or whoever will meet with you and talk about your child's needs. And we did that. We had a kindergartner moving from a full-day program over in Manhattan to a half-day program, and he was bored stiff. They didn't have a gifted program in place for the younger grades at that time at Cottonwood. And so listening to us, they actually said, maybe we better start one. And so they decided to test several of the kids, and they got one started.
Scott Gardner.
Okay, I think one of the things we've got to do is first we've got to recognize that somebody is gifted. And the only way we can do that is by communicating with them. And one of the things that we don't do well as a society is communicate. We always want everybody to give their opinion. And oftentimes when we're talking to someone, we're waiting for that break while they take a breath so we can say what we want to say. So the first thing we've got to do is open up those lines of communication, and in order to communicate, it means that I have to listen. And so once we start listening, we'll start understanding the situation better, and we can actually get to the root of the problem. My daughter is a teacher in the school district, okay? One of the things that they told her not to do was to help the kids who were excelling. Don't push them ahead, keep them right where they are. When I came up through the school system, the school is no longer here, Hartgarn Elementary School, we were pushed to be the best that we could be. And they had no problem in identifying kids that were gifted. And we had a lot of intelligent kids come through the north end of Salina because those teachers, that principal, pushed those kids to be the best that they could be. And if that means that you were in the 5th grade and they started giving you 6th grade material, and if you could do that, then they would give you 7th grade material. They didn't care. Whatever it took to keep your interest level and keep you going is what they did. So I think the first thing we got to do is we got to open up the lines of communication, and we've got to challenge our teachers and challenge our students to be the best that they can be.
Scott. Mark Bandry.
So one of the things I really like about Salina is the neighborhood school system at the elementary level. I'm not sure if the question was referring to an elementary student or a high school student, but at the elementary level, we mentioned Cottonwood, we mentioned Meadowlark. Wherever the school is the student's attending, I feel like the parents and the teachers have to be able to be empowered to communicate, just as Scott says, through that school. I mean, the individual teacher is the one who's going to be able to identify the gifted student. If that student is not getting enough support, whether it's through a school counselor or the principal, that needs to be able to raise up. And if there's problems, then the principal needs to communicate that through to the school board. So having worked in education all these years, I've seen communication not work at all. I've seen it work very effectively. And I agree with what others have said. The only way this particular problem is going to be addressed is making sure the parent is empowered to communicate with the teacher and so forth on up the ladder. So as a school board person, I do all I can to help with that. But I really feel like our local principals and all are doing a good job with these things already.
Dana?
I actually have kind of a different thought on this. I have 3 children, and they're all 3 gifted. Not all of them were in the gifted program, but they're all 3 gifted. And as a parent, it is my job to find their gift, push them, encourage them, speak out to the schools, speak out to the teachers, and be their advocate. And I think a lot of times as parents, we don't think they're gifted if they don't pass the test, but we need to encourage our children to show their gift and share their gift.
Thank you. Anyone else want to take a bite at that apple? Okay. Give you a chance. Next question. Okay, I'm combining 2. School board candidates, what's the biggest problem facing USD 305 right now, apart from funding? And this segues into how you would plan to increase teacher salaries, or how you would work toward that. Yeah, come on, grab that one.
So I can't remember who, but somebody actually mentioned this in their comments. I think the biggest problem that USD 305 faces outside of funding is attracting quality teachers, and not only full-time teachers, but substitutes. My wife, as the district reading instructional specialist, part of her job is to find times when teachers can come and receive additional instruction about how to incorporate reading into the curriculum. That's a real challenge for the school district, because in order for those teachers to be able to come and get additional professional development training, there has to be somebody to substitute in their classroom. And there's a lack of those, for sure. There's just a lack of teachers in those ways. Again, working at Bethany as a past Kansas Wesleyan employee, obviously both have education programs that do a nice job preparing teachers. I think there's ways that the school board can help Ms. Exline do additional recruitment, do additional attracting out there as far as finding full-time people to come in. The substitute teacher thing is a tricky one though, because there's to be willing to come into the schools and do that is a challenge. Not everybody's prepared for it, but what I want to work with the school board to try, and the administration, to try and find additional ways to help people want to come into the schools, want to share their gifts and their knowledge with the young people. So hope that helps a bit.
Thank you. Thank you. It looks like Scott wants to take a shot.
It's a good question. It's also a tricky question because not being in the school board, not being in the school system, I don't know what their day-to-day issues are. So I'm not going to sit up here and try to tell you that I do, because each individual school board is going to be different. However, having a black belt in innovation engineering, I understand that from the manufacturing and the workforce side, innovation is critical right now. And so looking for our kids to make sure that our kids and our teachers are being innovative in the classroom, to make sure that we're keeping their attention, to make sure that we're giving them the best that we can give them with what we have. We have got to become more innovative in what we do and in the way that we do things. And that's a skill set that can be taught. Are we doing that? Are we doing it well? Those are questions that we have to ask ourselves. We can't compare ourselves to anybody else. We have to be the best USD 305 that we can be. And if we excel past what everybody else is, that's on them. But for us, we have to do that. We have got to become more innovative in what we do. We've got to take on the big challenges and not be afraid to tackle.
Thank you, Scott. Looks like Dana.
I actually was quite surprised and excited. A friend of mine just went to school went to teach at the Blue Valley School District, and Salina was very competitive in their salary, and I thought that was a really good sign for Salina. And I think not that we shouldn't give them more money, because obviously that's something we should work towards. But I think it's nice to know that we are competitive. On the substitute issue, I have lots of friends who teach in UST 05, and that is a very big issue. But I'm also lucky enough to have a lot of friends who substitute. And the substitute piece is adults are afraid of children today. They're intimidated by children. They're scared of children. We've got to find a way to help them understand that when they do walk into our schools, they're safe. They will have a plan when they walk into the school. They will know what that day is supposed to look like, and that they're supported. And I really get the feeling that our community does not know where they stand when they come as substitutes. So we've really got to work on that piece of the puzzle.
Ann, did you have your hand up?
Thank you. So my head is full of stuff and ideas about the school district, and I think the teacher recruitment issue is an issue across the state, because not very many people are going into education in college anymore, and that makes a shortage. Something else I was, and the state Board of Education has made this whole new idea of teaching, and you have to teach to make sure the kids are are successful, clear off 2 years past high school. We now track them clear all the way there, as well as making sure they're kindergarten ready. But the thing that comes to mind as the biggest issue, I think, might be special ed, and that is required of all the kids. I mean, you have to provide the least restrictive education and appropriate education for kids of all levels, and the kids at the most needy levels, that's not probably the best word, but it's very expensive to educate them. And the feds have rules and the state has rules, but neither the feds nor the state provide the funding that they are supposed to, by law, provide. So, and there are many more children with emotional needs now, it's for some reason, and it makes kids harder to focus. And it makes it harder to be a substitute teacher. It makes it harder to be a teacher, because you have kids that lose it every day in class, and you have to figure out a way to deal with them. And so more paras, more help in the classroom, more special ed teachers would make that easier, but of course that costs money. So it's a real balancing act, trying to keep the kids challenged and under control, which the goal is to have them control themselves. And that's part of what the teachers are teaching. And that's part of the soft skills that the state says we need to be teaching now. Self-discipline, self-control, so that when you're out, you show up for work on time, you don't blow up at your co-workers. And those are all the things that the school is trying to teach, and it's very complicated. So I would say that special ed is the hardest issue right now.
Thank you, Ann. I want to point something out here. Everybody's really eager to answer questions. And so even though our time is limited here today, hopefully, and I can't speak to all of your schedules and what you may have back-to-back with this event, hopefully you will stick around after we're done, mingle, people can come up to you and ask these questions. I don't think there's anybody here who seems terribly shy about responding to questions here. We're not going to get through a fraction of the questions that we've already had submitted. In fact, this is going to have to be the last one for the school board candidates, and I just have to figure out which one it's going to be. All right, we're going to make a forced choice here, both in which question to ask and the question itself. Should school board members be most responsive to, and pick only one, teachers, administrators, legislators, students, parents. If you had to pick a priority, if you had to put one of those on top of the list, which one would it be?
When the school board members are new, they go to all these trainings and over they tell you, you have one employee, and that's the superintendent. And it's the superintendent's job to hire and fire everyone who's not the superintendent and not the school board. They're all the employees of the superintendent, and the superintendent is our employee. And so I'm going to have to pay more attention to the superintendent. If a parent comes to me, I care, but I'm going to say, did you talk to your principal? Then did you talk to, well, first of all, did you talk to the teacher? Did you talk to the principal? Then can you go up the chain of command, which is quite a military term, but it sort of draws the picture. So I have to pay more attention to the superintendent. And at this point, I think that's the wisest thing for me to do. So that's my answer. Thank you.
No fear on that one. Anyone else want to take a bite? Mark?
So I hadn't mentioned it, but my wife and I have 2 children as well. Similar ages too, by the way. Mine are 24 and 21. And the older one graduated from high school in Baldwin City, Kansas, and then from Kansas Wesleyan. Our younger son graduated from Salina South and is now a junior, well, actually a senior. He graduated from high school early and is on track to graduate from University of the Pacific in 7 semesters as well. Both of those guys told me whenever they had problems in school that, Mom, Dad, if it's really big, you need to start it by talking to the teacher. I really liked Ann's answer about the process. You've got to start at the right place. And as a parent, you start with the teacher. If that doesn't work, then you go to the principal and so forth from there. I 100% agree with Ann that as a member of the school board, we have to start kind of in reverse order. We have to start with the superintendent. And we have to trust that that person, Ms. Exline, is doing her job. If she's not, we have one employee, then we make decisions. I don't anticipate anything like that happening. But Ms. Exline is in charge. We've got to work with her. And I agree, if a neighbor comes to me and I'm on the school board and they've got a problem with their child, I'm going to listen for sure, but I want that person to work with their teacher first and so forth that direction. So basically, I 100% agree with Ann, but appreciate the opportunity to talk.
Oh, that looks like Corey was.
I'd just like to say I started by talking with Superintendent Exline about initiating some kids listening forums, some opportunities to listen more to the students. Turns out she herself had started a program like that at South High School, and she was very interested, and we might pursue this, letting a lunch period or something also have just a time to listen. Thanks.
And if there are no takers on that question, we will conclude this portion of our forum and segue seamlessly, I tell you, into the portion of our program devoted to candidates for Salina City Commission. And same rules apply, a 3-minute statement or less if you want. We'll go in alphabetical order, as long as nobody messes with me this time. And I think in alphabetical order, John Blanchard would be first up. John?
Okay, thank you, James. Also, thank you to the Salvation Army for allowing this venue to happen today. I'd also like to thank North Salina Community Development and the NAACP for co-hosting this event. I'm a subscribing life member of the NAACP. I've been a member in the Salina branch 4041 for about 8 or 9 years. And I was a founding board member for North Salina Community Development. A couple of years ago when the NAACP had a meet and greet and then solicited questions or gave questions out and solicited responses from candidates, unfortunately, only a couple of candidates prepared remarks. So what I did is I want to be proactive here. I appreciate the fact that we'll be getting some questions later that we'll be able to answer. But I went ahead and took that list of 2017 questions and printed out my responses to those, and I'll make those available at the back. So whatever questions don't get answered at that point, hopefully I will have addressed some of your concerns, such as poverty, income and wages, direct representation, and items such as that I think affect things like policies for affordable housing, good paying jobs, etc. A little bit about myself. I served on the Salina City Commission from 2013 to 2018. I've lived in New York City and Park City, Utah, two very different places, one with a lot of challenges and another one that was quite wealthy and very few problems. I have a history in community organization. I moved to New York City in 1988 and was involved in community organization around epidemic levels of homelessness and the AIDS crisis. And so I'm someone that's willing to take on difficult projects, difficult items, willing to talk about items that are very difficult. And when I commit to something, I'm willing to follow through. I want to make a real quick comment as it relates to having the courage of your convictions. In 2016, the Salina Central Pylon wrote 2 stories in their school newspaper about modern racism and subtle racism is wrong. Chloe Gillett and Annie Hayes did some very courageous things. They stepped up, took a lot of heat, and I wrote those 2 young ladies a letter that said I would do everything within my power to make sure that as a leader, I address those things. So I can tell you, I will address things like that when they come up. When subtle racism happens, I won't sit by and say nothing or wait a week to say some words. I will speak up to it immediately. I can't say that about the existing leadership, but I can guarantee you I will keep my words with those young ladies. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Our next candidate for Salina City Commission is James Bowden. Bowden. I have 50-50 chance.
How you doing? I'm James Bowden. I'm from Salina. I went to school at Salina Central, graduated from Bethany College. I am a farmer and a rancher near Gypsum as well. I left this country in 2014 and went to Panama for a stint in Peace Corps. What I realized after speaking with some of the members from our community is that Panama and Salina have some things in common. One of those things is underrepresented communities. One of the things that I like to talk about a little bit is privilege. Privilege comes in a lot of different forms. Wealth, skin color, fortunate connections, and with all those things, we're able to feel empowered and join leadership opportunities and become involved. But when you don't feel empowered and you're underrepresented, you're unable to join those things and feel encouraged to be a part of the community. And so what we have to do as privileged people in Salina is to seek out those underrepresented voices and make them our focus. We have to let them know that we hear them and that we're going to speak for them if we can't empower them ourselves. One of the main focuses of my campaign is to empower the underrepresented. Those communities in Salina are citizens of color, the LGBTQ communities, the elderly and disabled, and also the young people. We all have a stake in the future of Salina, and we all have to be involved in the decision making if we want to have a Salina that we want to be in. So I would encourage you to vote for me for City Commission on November 5th. So thank you.
Thank you, James. I didn't message your first name, I wonder why. Our next candidate for City Commission is Dr. Trent Davis.
I'm Trent Davis, and currently one of the city commissioners and currently serving as your mayor. So you've probably already made up your mind whether you like the job I've done or not, so I don't need to sit here and tell you what I'm going to do, because you've got 6 years of what I've done to predict what I'm going to do. It's good that we had the school board candidates first, because that is the workforce that future commissions here are going to have to plan for and work with. So we applaud all that you're doing. We can't interfere in your business or give you money, but anyway, the city commission can help. Please let us know. My mantra for this year is reason and responsibility, and it's the essential to good government, and it's what we're going to need for the next 4 years. We've made some very good investments in our physical structure, our financial future, which means we have spent a lot of money the last couple of years. So the next several years, we're going to have to finesse our way through things rather than spend our way through things. And to finesse things as a governing body means we have to have communication. We have to have city over self. We can't be obstructionist, and we have to be educated. You don't become smart just because you win an election. It takes school board, city commission. You have to learn how to do things. First year up here is scary. The first 3 meetings are very scary. You don't want to open your mouth and say anything. I did take a certified public management class at KU when I was vice mayor, and you can actually learn how to be better at what you do in a position like this. And that's going to be very, very necessary for this city over the next few years. Issues will always develop. I won't sit here and list all the issues that we're going to face. No matter what you have on your CIP or your plan, new stuff always comes up. I would love to see us stick to our strategic plan, because it defines who we are as a city. We should budget in a way that we do what's called budgeting for outcomes, where if something is important to the citizens of Salina, that issue gets the money, time, and resources. And we will have to measure our results so that the next year we can reallocate our resources even better. I think I'm uniquely qualified to help us through the next 4 years. It will be a very fun time. Thank you.
Thank you, Trent. Our next candidate for City Commission is Rod Franz.
No, James, I thought I'd get away without doing this. As he said, my name's Rod Franz. Some of you may know that I'm the former Director of Finance for the City of Salina. I care about Salina. It's been a good place for me to work, live, and raise my children. I want to give back to the community that has given me that. I believe I have a unique combination of experience, education, and skills to contribute to the future of our community. I intend to engage in civil conversation with citizens on all sides of any issue and remain open to new ideas. I respect citizen input and knowledge and will consider each issue on its merit for the community. I'm committed to open and accountable government, citizen engagement, and quality services financed by stable and responsible taxes. We should strive to add value to our citizens' lives. Sound financial policy and planning are essential to achieving those objectives. In today's environment, with changes in traditional news outlets, the pervasiveness of social media, the polarization of political views, it is essential that we develop new and more effective ways of informing, encouraging participation, reaching out to and engaging people in their community. We should complement traditional forms of community and economic development by providing quality services and facilities for our residents. We need to retain and attract people as well as business and industry. We need to ensure that areas of the community challenged by aging infrastructure and housing stock are included in proportion to their need. Incentives for job creation must focus on jobs that pay good wages and benefits that elevate the living standards in the community and that provide opportunities for those whom are underemployed to fully use their potential. A little about me: I grew up in the small city of Walton, Kansas, a part of a working class family, the youngest of 7. My dad worked as a farm, construction, assembly, and custodial laborer. My mother was a health aide, dishwasher, and cook. I'm a graduate of Newton High School, Emporia, and Wichita State Universities. I was the Director of Finance in Salina from 1996 to 2016. Before that, I was Director of Administration in Arkansas City for 13 years. I would appreciate your vote on November 5th.
And our final speaker at the candidate forum, Carl Ryan.
Well, let me echo the other candidates in thanking both the Salvation Army and Northtown and the NAACP and President Frazier. I don't think that we've heard Carmen Beverly's name mentioned, but thank you for organizing the group that to have this event today. Pardon me. Sandy Beverly. Oh, I'm sorry. So I'd like to extend my thanks for inviting me to give the comments here at this forum today. My wife thinks I'm crazy to be running for re-election again, but I think we have done a lot of good in the last part of our term, and I would like to continue that work. I believe I have the kind of life experience that brings a civil, positive attitude that celebrates our great city's story. I'm a lifelong Salinian with 3 generations of family before me and now 2 new generations behind me. So I'm anxious to promote the growth and cultural well-being of the community that's given so much to my family. I believe good government should protect, maintain, and support the investments that have been made by the citizens of Salina that have preceded us. That success has been built on cooperation, implementing best practices, knowing what our limitations are and not reaching beyond our grasp, and continuing to invest in ourselves. I desire to see Salina at all civic and artistic levels have the amenities and the vibe that welcome and attract new and diverse members to our community with equal opportunities for all. As a commissioner, I will promote a city that's healthy, safe, and vibrant. We have to invite everybody to the table. We have to be transparent, and we have to communicate to be successful. Salina should be the regional city of choice. To enhance and present our presence in this region, we must attract our children, elders, millennials, and centennials to Salina by offering opportunities. Infrastructure, built environment, the arts, educational opportunities, job training, and job creation, affordable housing options, and available child care are all important issues. We need events and opportunities that promote civic engagement and social relationship building to develop our community culture in a new way for a new generation. I love Salina and everybody in it. I'm a product of the 60s, Woodstock, children of God. I just take people one at a time as I meet them, and I try to help them get from this place they are to the place they want to be. The Pledge of Allegiance says, with liberty and justice for all. That is what I think Salina should be about.
I just had an idea. Given that we have a lot of questions submitted for school board members and probably have a lot of questions on people's minds for commission members, if y'all want to submit those on the cards or find me later and I'll jot them down, I'd be more than happy to compile all those questions, send them out to all the candidates, and let you know either what kind of bullets you dodged, or give you an opportunity to respond. And through NAACP, we'll try to make your answers available if you choose to answer those questions. We are going to go to a Q&A portion. This is for City Commission candidates. The first one we have is sort of a two-parter. You can't answer one without answering the other, so listen carefully. Name one thing that the City Commission, in its most recent term, has done that you support, and explain why. Second part is, name one action the City Commission has taken in its most recent term that you think was a mistake, and explain why. So one good thing, one not so good thing, and you gotta answer them both. Anybody want to be first up? Do we want to go with 2-minute responses here? Might allow more questions to be asked. How about 2 minutes then? Just, I really want to go back to the idea of throwing the microphone at people. People are no fun at all.
I'll go ahead and take that one first.
Okay, John Blanchard.
Okay, you're really challenging me to find the one good thing. Okay. But in the recent budget session, there was talk of not allowing for an increase in employee wages at one point. And I think what ended up happening is that there was a 2% cost of living adjustment added to employee wages. When I was mayor, it had gone 7 years when there was no cost of living adjustment. So I felt that was important. That's something that I really championed. So in order to be consistent, I have to say that I appreciate that a raise, cost of living adjustments were provided for city employees. And I hope that that continues moving forward. And I also think that we need to consider employee wages earlier in the process instead of waiting until we get to the end of the process to figure out if we have any money left for the employees. 1 minute left. Something I didn't like. Now that's a much larger risk. So I'll just put it in a general category. I think that we are spending outside of our means. I think that we continue to focus on growing our new developments on the edge of town instead of building within the town. I think with a declining population base, that our budgets are going to be more challenged over time because we're going to have less people that are going to be able to be there to maintain that infrastructure. So I would like more fiscal responsibility at the city commission level and look after future maintenance obligations and consider an aging population on fixed incomes and how raising taxes affects those people most critically. Thank you. Next.
Carl Ryan.
Yeah, so the thing that I'm most pleased that we've been able to pass through the commission is our investment in the downtown of Salina. I grew up living in the downtown, 1 block off of the downtown. I thought all of that investment was 30 years too late, frankly. And to invest in our downtown served our mission statement to live downtown, and I believe that it'll serve as a major revitalization hunting for the word I need, but as a catalyst for development in the whole downtown and north town. The one thing that I'm disappointed that we had to move away from was the plastic bag ban, which is a personal thing of mine, but it probably just procedurally and taking the lead on that item in Kansas may have brought the city into litigation or the state acting on the ban over top of us, but it's something that I think that we're still on the back burner to approach at a future time when the staff's better able to cope with it.
All right, James out. Thanks, James.
One thing I like that I've seen the city commission look into is the affordable housing development going in or being talked about at Centennial Park. But what concerns me is incentivizing developments that don't follow our housing plan. One of our main priorities is finding affordable housing and developing within the city limits, and we're incentivizing more greenfield development, in particular the Schilling development and the Markley development, which is okay to develop, but it's not following our housing plan. So if we're gonna incentivize something through the city government, I feel that we need to incentivize things that follow our housing plan.
One good thing, one bad thing. God, friends.
It's kind of hard to limit it, but I'm going to pick a couple of small items that I saw just recently. One was refinancing outstanding bonds. I'm a numbers guy, that catches my attention, but saving $1 million in future costs is fairly significant. The thing that probably disappointed me the most recently was how the discussion on the plastic bag ban went. Now, I understand some of the reasons they chose not to do that, but I think that there was an intermediate position that could have been taken by which the city would have used some of its existing resources, committed to reducing the waste stream to the landfill in order to encourage people to use reusable bags and kind of nudge us down the proper road without an outright ban.
Looks like Trent Davis would like another shot at this one.
Well, I think the guys who sat on the dais before will tell you there is no just one good time and one bad time. Every meeting there are about 10 good things and about 20 bad things, and you dodge most of those bullets. The ones that come to mind, this commission, and you may not appreciate it watching on TV, learned the art of communication. We have to debate and talk in public on a TV screen. It's a lot harder to do that than when you're in a closed room or talking to someone on the phone. But we learned that you can disagree without being disagreeable. And if you have open lines of communication, you'd be surprised how easy it is then to find middle ground to reach a consensus and move things forward. The old saying that government moves slowly is an understatement. It moves any slower, it'd go backwards. I know we said one, but I think something we have not stood out really taking credit for is we hired a new city manager. We had a lot of things planned last year. One of them was assuming that our current administration would still be there. That was a daunting task. We involved as many people in the process as we could have, and I think we followed the process quite well and have a good city manager. Mistake may have been not having enough financial the dashboard to predict economic trends. We had some budgetary shortfalls that had to be corrected, but we have corrected them. We may have too much of a reliance on our current builders to take care of the central city housing. We'll have to open up to outside consultants. And the plastic bag ban is not dead yet. All right, so stay ready.
Thank you. I think that's what we've heard from everybody on that question. I'm going to combine two questions for this one. So the first part of the question is, what to you, and I'm speaking to you as a candidate for office, not you personally as a person of means or scraping by, but what to you as a potential city commission member is an affordable first-time home price? And that is combined with the question of, concretely, how can we increase the supply of affordable housing in Salina? We love that question, don't we? Yeah. Dr. Davis.
My answer wasn't going to get any better the longer I sat there, so I just figured I'd go first and get it started. Now, I'm older. I'm at the age group now where I would be expecting to start downsizing, but my guess is that in the 165 to 235 range. That may be kind of high, but it also assumes that you have a decent wage. You can get houses for less. You'll have to put more money into them. I wrote a note here, but I couldn't. What was the second half? I can't read my own note.
How to concretely increase affordable
Okay,
housing.
thank you. Right. I'm of the opinion that there are different desires for different types of housing in town. Some people grew up with ranch houses out in the country. They're going to want ranch houses out in the country. I'm a East Coast native. I'm used to row houses. Not that I necessarily want to live in one, but you can do very well in row houses. Young people don't want a lot of big fancy fireplaces, and not to generalize, but give them the open space, they'll fill it in the way they want it. So I think we need a variety. We have a lot of folks who are going to be here in Salina for 3, 4, 5 years when they're in school. Younger folks change jobs more quickly, so they may not want to put all that money in the house. So we have to have options. And I think one option will not necessarily come at the expense of another if we do it right.
All right. Anyone else? James?
For me, an affordable house would be about $100,000, and I make about $40,000 a year. But what the real question is how many jobs in Salina make $40,000 a year? There are so many service industry jobs here that cannot afford to buy a $100,000 house, and we have to take a look at what jobs we have, what quality jobs we have, and what jobs we already have that aren't paying well enough so that these young people can afford houses and dwellings that they want to live in.
Rod France?
I struggle with the term affordable housing because I think it means something different to every person. It was pointed out to me that affordable housing is more than the purchase price of a house. It includes what you have to pay for rental if you're renting. That's a piece of the problem. I spent some time here a couple of weeks ago looking at homes for sale in Salina, Kansas, and I found a fairly good spread from about $50,000 to about $500,000. Fairly evenly spread, surprisingly, in $100,000 increments or $50,000 increments, whatever I was looking at. What I did notice was they're in different neighborhoods. They have different kinds of amenities. So when you start to build a house, what someone has in mind is, I want a $100,000 house. And they say, oh, but it has to be in this neighborhood, or it has to be not in this neighborhood, or we have to have access to this school. Oh, by the way, I want granite countertops. Okay, that is one of the reasons it's so difficult to talk about affordable housing. I agree with James is that we need to focus on job development. There's a lot of people who simply cannot afford a home of almost any type that is within their income. So job development's an important part of it. We need to ask people what they expect out of their housing. To just simply build homes and without asking people what it is that they want, I think is short-sighted.
Thank you, Rod. I don't even know why I get up here in between. Carl Ryan.
Thank you. I would say that the 150,000 range would be a target, but of course, you've got all kinds of market pressures, and I'm a free market guy. I think that the marketplace is going to determine a lot of these things for us, and we don't have a lot of control over those things. I think what the city can do is look into the codes and try to open up the codes, possibly allow more density in residential areas and more in the city's greater map, so that if you can have 3 or 4 people living in a townhome in a residential area, that's going to lower the cost of their housing just by simple math.
Thank you. John Blanchard.
So if I understand the question correctly is, what is affordable? Well, affordable isn't a price point. Affordable is based on what your prevailing wages are in the community, your median incomes, and your median rental values and home values. In Salina, our median rent, gross rent, from 2011 to 2017 went from $599 a month to $739 a month. What affordable is what your gross rent as a percentage of your income is. The Census Bureau tracks all of this, and 25 to 30%, anything more than 25 or 30% puts you in a category of rent burdened, which means your rent is so much higher than you can afford that whatever your rent is, your income, if it's going to be the $739, it better be up there. It translates this. There's the same statistics apply to home ownership and homes with a mortgage on them. So one of the things we need to do is we need to have housing policies that address different types of housing, what we subsidize and what we don't, and be real careful that we are doing and developing areas that add to lower costs, monthly costs, instead of raising them. And I think that, so we need to quit focusing on a price point, and because when we focus on price point, we don't pay attention to the most important and critical factor, and that is that we need to raise wages. Okay? So what I do to help affordable housing, I do things that help to raise wages and get better paying jobs. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. Discussion is brewing in Salina about moving to a geographical district approach to elections as opposed to at-large elections. What is your position on this idea at this time? Anybody want to field?
I'll go. I already have an answer. It was part of what I told you was in my handout. So rather than contradict myself, I'll just read you my answer so I'm consistent with it. It was a question that was asked in 2017 of candidates, and the question was, would you support a charter ordinance repealing the existing city commission elections from an at-large basis to one of districts? My answer was yes. For far too long, Salina has ignored parts of town, most notably North Salina, and has instead focused on areas that were guided solely by business interests. Those business interests have historically paid for commission campaigns that have resulted in business and special interests being represented over citizens' needs. In order to have equal representation, I believe we need to have people represented and not the needs of special interests. So the people need to be the priority, and neighborhoods need to be a priority. Another way I think we start to get to that type of representation is that I also propose, and it's in here, that we move our meetings from 4 times a month to twice a month, and then we also hold our meetings at 6 p.m. in the evening so that more working people can attend the meetings. People have more time to study the issues. Commissioners have more time to contemplate the consequences of their decisions and even unintended consequences. So there are a number of things that I believe go along with representation by district, and I think that we can do it in a similar fashion to communities like Lenexa, Overland Park, Olathe, who have successfully navigated those waters, and I think the citizens could be better served.
Thank you, John. Anyone else want to field that question? Question about district elections.
I do not favor districting the city of Salina. I believe that each commissioner represents the entire city, and that is a value. If there were districting, I think that the problem would be that each district representative is going to work to represent his district, and that would create a lot of infighting and take away from a mindset that represents the entire community.
Thank you. Anyone else? Dr. Davis.
Sometimes it's better just to sit down and say nothing, but I guess my silence would have been conspicuous. I'm going to do the ultimate hedge here and actually say if we go to districts, and I actually was surprised that Salina was not districted when I moved here 20 years ago. But most cities that I've lived, well, I've only lived in 4 cities, but they all had a combination of districts and at-large votes. You have to have some folks who are elected who are approachable to everyone. Otherwise, the log jams that you can get when one district representative refuses to cooperate with another because he or she is waiting for something in return can be paralyzing. So I'd actually favor a hybrid. That would require increasing the number of commissioners, but certainly open to discussion. One thing about every other week meetings, in my CPM class I was with several folks from cities that have meetings every other week. Their meetings start at 6 or 7 in the evening, and they end at 12:30 in the morning because the agenda notebook is this thick. So just be careful what you ask for.
Rod Friends.
Don't start my timer yet, Brian. What is CPM?
Certified Public Manager.
Now you can go. I have, most of the cities I've lived in have had at-large representation. I know a lot of people who live and have worked in cities who have district representation. There are a lot of benefits touted for both and a lot of whatever a non-benefit is touted for both. I think it depends on the community and it depends on the details. How many districts are there going to be? Who's going to get to draw the boundaries? What is the basis for those boundaries being drawn? Is the mayor elected at large from the whole community? Is he elected from among the other district representatives? What role does the mayor play? Do we keep the city manager? Do we change to something else? Are there at-large representation besides the mayor, as Dr. Davis said? So I really would need to look at the details of the proposal in order to say exactly what I felt about it. Generally, though, if districting is to come about, I would favor a system that has maybe 4 or 5 district representatives and maybe 3 at-larges, as long as you come up to an even number or an odd number of commissioners, so there's tiebreaker capacity. And that's pretty much it. It just kind of depends.
Rod brings up a good point about gerrymandering, and if we're going to have districts, we have to consider what those boundaries are. So I do favor Trent's approach with the hybridized system. I think it allows representation from key districts within Salina and also at large. I also like the idea of moving the time later in the evening so that working people can have a chance to give their piece at a city commission. I hesitate to go to 2 meetings rather than 4. As someone that is filling out permits for Feast on the Fae and other events in town, I know that we all have to get things done. So having those every week is very beneficial for groups that need to get things done here in town. So, thank you.
Thank you. I think this is going to be our last question, and I'm trying to combine questions here, so I will probably fail to be terribly precise. So let's conclude trying to answer or speak to the following. All the candidates seem to be saying that they want to see Salina as a destination city or a place where you would live and grow old or relocate, especially if you're young. Pretty much every non-metropolitan area is challenged by retaining young people or getting them back after they go off to school or find a career or whatever. We don't seem to do surveys, however, of young people to ask them why they might not want to be here. And can you speak to young people? I mean, maybe they're too young to vote for you, so there's no actual payoff for it, but can you speak to what we can do as a community to make Salina a place that people want to stay in or come back to? James Book? Oh.
I think it's a two-tiered approach. I think the most important thing is community engagement. If we don't have a healthy community culture, we're not going to keep people here. So we have to create that through activities, whatever we can do that gets people involved in interacting with each other to build relationships with each other. That's going to keep people here. The other side of that is we have to have higher wages. If we don't have higher wages, we're not going to have people here either. So it's both of those things in combination, which is going to build our community and make Salina a prosperous place.
John Blanchard.
I think I can answer your question very accurately because I actually have that experience. I graduated from Salina South High School and I graduated from Kansas State University with a degree in landscape architecture. I wanted to move to New York City when I graduated from college, so there wasn't anything that was going to keep me here. And you know, as a young person, that's what I wanted. I wanted adventure, I wanted challenge, I wanted big city and all the great things that went along with that. I moved from there, I didn't move back to Salina because I was still relatively young, and I moved to Park City, Utah because I love to ski. And I'm going to tell you, when you're young, there is nothing more fun than living in a little resort town. So there's nothing that Salina could have done to keep me here. So it's nothing that Salina could be that I was looking for. What I can tell you though is unfortunately, I'm not sure, I think that a lot of young people, we do a great job with the schools, and we educate kids to want to be adventurous and move out and do big things. And I don't think we ever want to stop doing that. But what comes along with that is that since the 80s, there has been a phenomenon called rural flight. Okay, and that's just what our young people want to do. And I'm not a parent, but I can't imagine that parents don't want their children to go off and seek adventure and do great things. So I think what we need to do is we really need to focus on the kids that stay. I don't think we focus enough on the kids that stay. We got to teach them up good, the ones that stay. And then if the ones like myself end up coming back later in life, then that's great and that's gravy. So. But I think we need to focus a lot more on the kids that end up staying and still encourage our kids to go out and seek adventure. So,
Thank you. Anybody else want to tackle this one? All right, it looks like it's Rod France.
I'll never ask a politician to talk, you know. I think the first thing we need to do is we need to figure out who it is our target group is, and we need to talk to them and find out what they want. You know, if the target group is working families from, say, age 25 to 45, one of the things that they have to have is childcare. Okay, that needs to be a focus if we're going to approach that group. For younger people, single people, it may be something different, but we need to focus on the services that we provide. I said something about that earlier, in order to attract and retain people. And the best way to do that is ask them what it is they want, and then try to figure out a way to provide that.
Thank you, Ron. Dr. Davis.
I think you just heard two good phrases. James, community culture. And childcare truly is important. People ask, what are your schools like, and is the childcare, before they're even going to consider moving here. We told our three boys, you have to leave after you graduate from high school. but you can come back. We didn't want them to ever feel as though they were trapped here. They weren't born here, so we didn't want them to feel as though they were trapped. If they came back, it would be on their own volition. That generation of kids, some of them are coming back. You got one right here in James Bowden, and doing great things. The money they're going to make is going to be dependent upon the job skill they bring back with them. And you can raise minimum wages up, but it still pretty much is, your salary is determined by what you do. I was at South High School yesterday in a government class, and the attention span is about 6.2 minutes. I learned that the hard way yesterday. But the last question I asked them was, what do you want the city to do for you? They told me the names of some stores they want to have downtown. And one young lady said, I want stuff to do so when I go downtown, I won't get in trouble. I said, yeah, that's a heavy answer. But we're going to have free things that kids can do. But it's not the kids, it's that 35 to 45-year-old group. And if we have a city culture, like a lot of college towns do, or what's the one in Colorado, where Colorado State is, people just think of it as a great place. But we have to work on that branding, and people will want to come here.
Fort Collins. Fort Collins.
I thought you were heckling Boulder. Hadn't heard that one before. Okay. When I'm angry, I yell out the names of Colorado cities. That's just how I roll. Anyone else want to tackle this question about retaining or retract or reclaiming, re-enticing young people? All right, if not, we have actually finished more or less on time, believe it or not. Again, candidates, people had way more questions than we could get to. If you can stick around or make an opportunity to talk with some of these folks here and discuss the issues that they care about. I tried to sift and sort and combine as much as I could, but I do want to thank you all for attending. I want to thank you all for running. I want to find out what Ryan wants me to mention. And yes, if you are not registered to vote, or if you know someone who is not registered to vote, or if you would like to know if you are not registered to vote, or you're a family member or a friend that really needs to get out there, it kind of all starts there. We do have legal women voters with voter registration cards at the back. You can take them with you. You can fill them out here. Janice? And yes, if you have moved recently, I'm talking to the TV now, which is panned away from me. If you have moved, and that includes if you've moved from one neighborhood of Salina to another neighborhood in Salina, I believe, you definitely want to check the legitimacy of your current voter registration and probably re-register. ksvotes.org is one place to check your voter registration. But yes, if you've moved down the block next door, you may want to check the status of your voter registration. It's very important. You don't want to show up on election day and find out that you're going to be a provisional ballot or not be allowed to vote. So very important. Again, thank you all the candidates who arrived, who came and spoke to us today. Thank you for being solicitous to the questions that came out. Thank you for offering to serve your community in the capacities where you declared. And please stick around tonight. We got Cash Hollister, we got the wave going to happen here.
We got Brookfield chicken coming out at 5 for supper.
We've got Brookfield chicken coming out at 5 for supper. Can you beat that? No, you cannot. Unless you're vegan or something, in which case I got nothing for you. Thank you. And that's our wrap.
I just got to say, since they brought up plastic bags, I have a bunch of these reusable 100% recycled material bags. If anybody would like them, they're here for free. They're happy to give them.
And we did have a lot of questions that I couldn't get to that focused on environmentalism, especially with regard to the Kids Days, climate change, sustainability in Salina. So those are issues that are out there and that people may want to talk to you about. Again, thank you all for coming, and that's a wrap.